We're joined by Rick Pitino, former coach of the Celtics, current coach of the Louisville Cardinals, who won the national championship. Rick Pitino, hello.
Morning, guys.
You stink. You ruined the Celtics.
In the 1980s, the Boston Celtics were basketball royalty. Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parish. Banner after banner. They had a dynasty built on toughness and teamwork, but by the early 90s, it all unraveled. Their main guys aged, Bird retired, and the decline began. After losing not one, but two players that were supposed to be franchise superstars, Len Bias in 1986 and Reggie Lewis in 1993, the Celtics had nobody to carry the torch. They became one of the worst teams in the league, and a well-respected franchise became irrelevant. They hit their worst in the 96-97 season when under coach Carr, winning only 15 games. In comes Rick Pitino, the hottest name in college basketball. He brought Providence College to the Final Four in the late 80s, then just a few years later led the Knicks to their first division title in almost 2 decades. He then turned the University of Kentucky into a powerhouse, winning the national title in 1996. The Celtics would see this success, and knowing that they had 2 lottery picks in the 97 draft and the best chance to get the number 1 pick, which was for sure going to be Wake Forest center Tim Duncan, they hired Rick Pitino and gave him full control of the team. Pitino promised to bring back Celtic pride. What he brought was nothing but chaos.
The Rick Pitino era officially begins. Pitino announced today, introduced as the Celtics' new head coach and president. Make no mistake about it, the Celtics are Pitino's team. He runs the whole show. Fans are hoping this is the start of great things.
On May 6, 1997, the Boston Celtics will sign Rick Pitino to a 10-year, $70 million deal to be the coach, general manager, and president of the team. Up until that point, that was the most that anybody in the Celtics organization had ever been paid. He made an immediate impact, but not in a good way. In becoming team president, legendary Celtics figure Red Auerbach was demoted from team president to a more ceremonial role as the team's vice chairman. This move already gave the Celtics fans a bad taste in their mouths, as they looked at it as Pitino demoting Auerbach himself, but Red did come out and say that he didn't want to do any big-time managing of the team and wanted to focus on his hobbies like racquetball and smoking cigars. He could have been telling the truth, or he could have just been trying to cover for Pitino. Either way, Celtics fans weren't trying to hear that. Then he would sign Lakers center Travis Knight to a 7-year, $22 million deal. It may not sound like a lot today, but in 1997, that was a lot of money, especially for a player who only averaged 4 points and 4 rebounds. Pitino was taking over a Celtics team that had just spent the last season tanking, finishing with an abysmal record of 15-67, the second worst record in the league. They tanked so they could have the best chance at drafting Wake Forest All-American Tim Duncan. They also had control of the Mavericks' first-round pick, which was bound to be a top 10 pick. Pitino thought he was walking into a gold mine. Tim Duncan, plus another top 10 pick, plus Antoine Walker, who was already with the Celtics, who Pitino had already coached at Kentucky, that team would have the potential to be one of the best teams in the league. But the hopes of that team becoming a real thing fell apart on the night of the draft lottery, when the Celtics, who were supposed to get the number 1 pick, fell to the number 3 spot, which meant no Tim Duncan. They also had the number 6 pick in the draft. With 2 top 10 picks, Pitino would then try to make a move to trade those picks for Scottie Pippen from the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls wanted Antoine Walker, and Pitino wasn't willing to get rid of his Kentucky star, saying that he wouldn't trade Antoine for anybody aside from Michael Jordan. The deal would have happened, with Pitino stating that he sweetened the deal, but the Bulls wanted the whole sugarcane factory. A first in a long line of memorable Pitino quotes. In the draft, with the 3rd pick, the Celtics would draft point guard Chauncey Billups out of Colorado. One of Pitino's former Kentucky players, Ron Mercer, was also in this draft. Although Mercer was an All-American at Kentucky, Rick came out and said publicly that Mercer didn't have the necessary talent to be a high draft pick. He instead was singing the praises of a Florida high school player named Tracy McGrady. Some people have thought that he was just downplaying Mercer so that he would be available for the Celtics with the 6th pick, and what do you know, the Celtics drafted him. Well played, Rick. Could have had Tracy McGrady instead, but well played. Funnily enough, McGrady would later say that he tanked his interview with the Celtics so that they wouldn't pick him because he didn't want to play for Pitino after hearing how tough he was as a coach.
There was a team that wanted to take you,
I'll just say it because I think I've told a version of the story before where the Celtics interviewed you and they were so scared because you didn't talk. Do you remember? Was it something specific about you? Were you just like, hey, man, I'm 18 and I don't have a lot to say and this is freaking me out?
In college, right? I was being recruited by Kentucky. I just knew how hard and how tough Rick Pitino was. Rick Pitino had left and become Boston coach. And I was like, I don't know if I want to play for Rick Pitino. And reason being is because my workout, like Rick, that was probably my hardest pre-draft workout ever. Out of all the teams I worked out, Boston was tough. And I was like, I don't want to play for Boston. I wouldn't mind playing for Boston. I just didn't want to play for Rick Pitino at that time. He was just too tough, man.
All right, so you're admitting now, 20 years later, you tanked that interview.
I wouldn't say I tanked it. I just didn't do a great job of being who I was. That's what I said.
Regardless, Billups and Mercer were 2 good draft picks. And I'm going to go into more detail later, but just know Pitino wasn't happy about not getting Tim Duncan. Drafting Mercer was the beginning of the narrative that Pitino was just trying to bring in a bunch of Kentucky guys. Antoine Walker, a Kentucky guy, was already there, and now they brought in Ron Mercer, who was projected to be a top 10 pick and was picked at 6, so at this point it's just a coincidence. The next moves made it feel a little bit more intentional. On October 23rd, 1997, the Celtics traded forward Chris Mills to the Knicks for a few players, one being second-year forward Walter McCarty, who was another star from Kentucky's '96 championship team that Pitino coached. This move confused everybody because Rick just signed Chris Mills to a 7-year, $34 million deal in August, just to trade him in October? They actually had to get rid of some players to clear cap space so they had enough money to sign Mills, and one of the players they had to get rid of was Rick Fox, who would go on to win 3 titles with the Lakers. The Boston fans were confused, but it was time to start the season. The Celtics started the '97 season beating the defending champion Chicago Bulls in the very first game. This win surprised everybody. They implemented a full-court pressure defense that Pitino brought with him from coaching college basketball, and they were able to stifle the Bulls' offense.
And the full-court pressure is paying off big time now for the Celtics.
It worked in the first game because the Bulls clearly weren't expecting an NBA team to full-court press all game, but this strategy became old quick. After that first win, the Celtics would lose their next 5. That full-court pressure defense that Pitino brought in worked while he was at Kentucky because, for one, you're coaching 17 to 22-year-olds that are filled with energy, and 2, in college you're only playing 35 to 40 games a year as opposed to the 82 games that you play in the NBA. These NBA guys are grown men. Having to press full court every game for 82 games is taxing on the body. Even guard Dana Barros, who came off the bench, said that he was in great shape, but it was still taxing on his body. He wasn't the only one. It seemed like everybody hated pressing all game.
Cold. We're pressing all the time. We had 3.5-hour practices. It was a lot.
He wanted to press, first of all. That was probably the biggest problem.
That's out of pocket. The league is crazy.
That's why college coaches don't make it.
He wanted to press.
Because doing that 2-2-1 is crazy.
He wanted to press. That was first of all. So it was tough finding guys that can really fit into that.
Mm-hmm. Aside from the toll it took on players' bodies, it was easy to game plan against. Doing this against college teams that are filled with players that won't make it to the NBA is much different than doing it against NBA veterans with much more basketball IQ that can easily break those presses and then attack mismatches. This style of play had them head into the All-Star break with a record of 22-25. On February 18th, right at the trade deadline, Rick would trade Celtics fan favorite D. Brown and the 3rd pick of the last draft, Chauncey Billups, to the Raptors for point guard Kenny Anderson and forward Popeye Jones. D. Brown tells a story about when he knew they got traded.
We're on a road trip playing Sacramento, and I don't play, and Chauncey Billups don't play. And Chauncey's a rookie. You gotta say,
first top 10 pick. Top 3 pick. Top 3 pick.
The 3rd pick of the draft. And Chauncey's like, man, we're not playing. I go, Chauncey, we got traded. He said, no, we didn't. I go, I've been around a long time. We just got traded. So we get on the bus. We went to Vancouver at the time. The Grizzlies were in Vancouver still. So we get on the bus. They're talking to Chauncey. They don't talk to me, but I kind of knew I'm part of this deal somewhere. I don't know where we're going. We get to the hotel in Vancouver, wake up the next morning, there's a note under my door says, "Don't come to the bus. You've been traded." That's how I got told I got traded after spending 8 years with the Celtics by Rick Pitino and that group. That's the part that hurt me.
This move was odd to say the least. Rick Pitino said that the 21-year-old Billups, after having him for only 51 games by the way, wasn't enough of a pure point guard for him, and that he wanted a more polished player at the position, and he felt like the 27-year-old Kenny Anderson fit that mold. Here's where I think it became obvious that Pitino was losing the plot. Remember, he signed a 10-year deal to manage the Celtics, so it would have made more sense to try to win in the present, but to also plan for the future. But trading your number 3 pick for a win-now move didn't seem like the smartest idea. It actually seemed like he was panicking a little bit because he wasn't having instant success. I mean, when have you ever seen a top 3 pick get traded halfway through their first season? Billups would later reveal that Pitino told him that he only made the trade because he had a lot of pressure on him to win. On top of that, Kenny Anderson was under contract for $8 million a year, which was a big number at the time. Despite him making the quote win now move, the Celtics failed to make the playoffs, finishing with a record of 36-46. What gets lost in all of this is that in his first season as Celtics coach, he coached them to a 21-win improvement, but his expectations coming in were clearly high. Actually, remember that narrative that Pitino was trying to bring in a bunch of Kentucky guys? I just want to add a little cherry on top of that. On March 25th, 1998, with 3 weeks left to go in the season, Pitino signed a player named Reggie Hansen to the Celtics. Who was Reggie Hansen, you ask? Hansen played for Kentucky, and he was actually there when Rick first got the job there in 1989 and played for him until 1991. He never got drafted and had been out of college for 8 years, and then suddenly, Pitino signs him to be on the Celtics bench. Hansen ended the season only playing 8 games, 26 minutes in total, scored 6 career points, and never played in the NBA again. From the outside looking in, it looked like Rick just wanted to help him fulfill a dream of finally playing in the NBA. But if that wasn't nepotism, then I don't know what is. That word only typically gets thrown around when you're getting a family member a job, but it actually applies when you're getting your friend a job too, which I don't particularly have a problem with. The Celtics players and fans, on the other hand, weren't too happy with the Kentucky bias.
Pushing Red out and bringing all the Kentucky guys in, and that was tough. That was tough.
In the 1998 offseason, the Celtics had the 10th pick in the upcoming draft. Before the draft, Pitino was on vacation in Italy when the Celtics GM Chris Wallace asked him to take a look at a prospect that was coming out of Germany by the name of Dirk Nowitzki. After he saw Dirk work out, he told Dirk's agent to tell other teams that Dirk would be staying in Europe for 1 more year in hopes of discouraging anybody else from drafting him so that he could fall to the Celtics. Pitino was quoted as saying, "I went home thinking we had our guy." Little did he know, Don Nelson, coach of the Mavericks, also had his eyes on Dirk after coaching against him in the annual Nike Hoop Summit. During the draft, Dirk would end up getting picked at the 9th pick by the Bucks before being traded to Dallas the same night. Pitino and the Celtics, with the 10th pick, might have been a little upset that they've just missed their guy, but they got a stroke of luck when realizing that maybe the best player of the draft was still available.
With the 10th pick in the 1998 NBA draft, the Boston Celtics select Paul Pierce from the University of Kansas.
Pierce was a swingman from the University of Kansas, and he was projected to be picked anywhere between 1 and 5, but somehow slid all the way to the 10th pick to the Celtics, and Pitino now potentially has his franchise player. The 1998 season started out in a lockout, with teams not starting play until February of '99, and when the season finally did start, the Celtics couldn't get going, and it looked as if Pitino was starting to lose the locker room already. In college, you can get away with constantly yelling at your players because technically they're still kids, but in the NBA, when dealing with fully grown millionaires, that strategy doesn't work as well. After a March 1st loss to the Nets, where Paul Pierce missed 2 free throws in the final seconds that potentially cost them the game, Pitino allegedly was heard yelling at Pierce after the game, allegedly making him cry, which of course he would later deny. Travis Knight, less than 1 year after signing his 7-year contract with the Celtics, was traded by Pitino after telling the media that he sold his soul to the devil for money by signing with Boston. The Celtics would finish 19-31 on the season, which was worse than the year before, so they're officially moving in the wrong direction. What's worse is they didn't have a pick in the 1999 draft because they traded their first-round pick to the Cavs for Vitaly Potapenko, who would end up averaging less than 10 points in the Celtics' career. The Cavs used that pick to select Andre Miller, who could have been the true point guard that Pitino had been looking for. With no draft pick, the Celtics would have to focus on free agency, but Ron Mercer was now asking for an extension. Both sides never came to an agreement, and with Paul Pierce looking like a potential star at the same position as Ron, Pitino would trade Mercer on August 3, 1999 to the Nuggets for 6'7" big man Danny Fortson and Eric Williams, who was one of the first players that Pitino got rid of when he arrived to Boston. During the 99-2000 season, the Celtics were under 500 for most of the year. Rick Pitino's frustrations came to a head on March 1, 2000, after a loss to the Toronto Raptors when Vince Carter hit this game-winning three to beat the Celtics for the third straight loss.
It in. Carter's going to get a shot off. He does. Got it! Vince Carter wins the game!
In the post-game press conference, the media asked Pitino what he could do to keep the team positive. He responded by saying that they were going to be positive every day, and it's the media being negative, and he would begin one of the most memorable rants in sports history.
You're the people being negative. You're some of the fans. Larry Bird's not walking through that door, fans. Kevin McHale's not walking through that door, and Robert Parish is not walking through that door. And if you expect them to walk through the door, they're going to be gray and old. What we are is young, exciting, hardworking, and going to improve. And people don't realize that. And as soon as they realize that those three guys are not coming through that door, the better this town will be for all of us. Because they're young guys in that room playing their asses off.
Now, that part alone was hilarious, but his next statement was very telling.
I wish we had $90 million under the salary cap. Wish we could buy the world. We can't. The only way we can do is work hard. And all this negativity that's in this town sucks. And I've been around, and when Jim Rice was booed, I've been around with Yastrzemski booed, and it stinks. It makes the greatest town, greatest city in the world lousy. The only thing going to turn this around is being upbeat and positive like we are in that locker room.
This told us basically everything we needed to know right there. For anyone that doesn't know, Boston has some of the toughest fans in the country. Boston loves and shows extreme loyalty to almost all of their players and coaches, but when you come in with a selfish, me-first type of attitude and appear to crumble under pressure, they begin to lose patience. They don't lose patience as fast as Philadelphia fans. They'll work with you a little longer, but they didn't want to work with Pitino, and this rant didn't help. He was clearly letting the pressure get to him, and the team was spiraling under his control. The Boston media, who were pretty much just Celtics fans with journalism degrees, were very vocal about their displeasure with Pitino, but could you blame them? He had high expectations, and they just wanted the team to win, and Rick seemed to be destroying the team. Not too long after this rant, the Celtics would go on to lose 10 straight, finishing the season with a 35-47 record. Pitino just finished his third season as the Celtics coach and president, and he appeared to peak in his first season, and he would never be able to win more than 36 games. After receiving Danny Fortson in the Ron Mercer trade, Pitino then tried to trade Fortson to the Toronto Raptors for Alvin Williams, who failed his physical, so the trade was canceled, so Fortson had to finish the year in Boston. I know that was awkward. Although Rick Pitino's days appeared to be numbered and the pressure on him to perform was getting heavier than ever, he denied all rumors that he would be going back to coach college and entered the 2000 offseason still as the Celtics coach and president. In his words, he wasn't going to quit on the team, but in all reality, the Celtics still owed him about $29 million on his contract, so him leaving wouldn't be the best financial decision. There was some notable free agents that Pitino could have had his eyes on, including Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, and Tim Duncan, but those three were determined to all get together and play in Orlando, even though Duncan ended up staying in San Antonio. Pitino, however, had his eyes on power forwards Austin Crozier, who played for Indiana, and Jermaine O'Neal from the Blazers. Both players would sign with Indiana. The funniest part of all this is that Pitino was close to signing Ron Mercer, who he literally just traded away. Mercer ended up signing with the Bulls, and the Celtics were left with no notable free agents. The 2000 draft, which was already a notoriously underwhelming draft class, brought Jerome Moiso to the Celtics with the 11th pick, and Pitino downplayed him before the season even started, saying he wouldn't be a difference maker. Then he would trade Danny Fortson and Dana Barros for Robert Pack and Hot Rod Williams, who would be waived before the season even started. So basically, Pitino and the Celtics had a running back with the same team that he just won only 35 games with. The good news was that Antoine Walker had another year of experience under his belt, and so did Paul Pierce, who was a clear superstar in the making. Well, right before the season started, the Celtics almost lost Paul Pierce. No, not due to Pitino's incompetence, but to a near-deadly incident in a Boston nightclub where he was stabbed 11 times. Pierce would end up making a full recovery just in time for the start of the Celtics season.
I can't wait to get back out on the basketball court, join my Celtic teammates, and hopefully a speedy recovery and get out there as soon as possible.
In just the third game of the season, Kenny Anderson would fracture his jaw in the game against the Cavaliers, and he would have to miss the next 16 games. Because of Pitino trading away their backup point guard Dana Barros, and now with Anderson hurt, the Celtics didn't have a serviceable point guard, and their offense stalled.
Pierce misses the jam.
Antoine Walker, their power forward, wound up having to bring the ball up, turning him into a point forward. They even had to go inside this guy, Rick Brunson, who happens to be the father of All-NBA guard Jalen Brunson. Rick only lasted 3 weeks on the Celtics before being waived, then claimed by the New York Knicks. By now, the fans in Boston were tired and just wanted the pain and suffering to end already. Pitino had been hinting that his days might be over in Boston for a while now, and after a blowout loss to the Sixers in November 2000, he blatantly threatened to quit if the team didn't start playing better defense. He said he would finish the year, but quote, there won't be a next year. By December, the team was spiraling, going 3-7 on the month. Kenny Anderson came back from his fractured jaw, only to be slowed down by an ankle injury. Then, finally, and I mean finally, on January 8th, 2001, with a 12-22 record, Rick Pitino stepped down as the president and head coach. Just like that. No interview, no press conference, just a brief statement. He had 6 more years left on his deal and several million, but it looked like the embarrassment just wasn't worth it, and he chose to quit. 2 months later, he went back to college to coach the University of Louisville. His Celtics tenure wasn't just a disappointment, it was a disaster. He drafted a future Hall of Fame point guard just to trade him 51 games later for an expensive point guard that couldn't stay on the floor. He overpaid players just to barely play them. He failed to adapt, sticking to his college-style full-court pressing for 82 games, which stressed his players out and failed against other professional basketball players. And finally, he blamed fans for his inability to turn the Celtics around.
And all this negativity that's in this town sucks. And I've been around, and when Jim Rice was booed, I've been around with Yastrzemski booed, and it stinks. It makes the greatest town, greatest city in the world lousy. The only thing going to turn this around is being upbeat and positive like we are in that locker room.
Oh, and remember when I said he wasn't happy about not getting Tim Duncan in the '97 draft? In the December 2000 edition of Sports Illustrated, while admitting that the Celtics coaching job was harder than he thought it would be, he mentioned that he thought that they were going to get Tim Duncan with the #1 pick, and that's what attracted him to the job in the first place. I mean, it's a lottery. Basketball fans all know how a draft lottery works, so I'm sure a coach and the team president does too. They had a 38% chance of getting the #1 pick, which was the best odds for that night, but I don't know why he thought it was a guarantee. He's actually mentioned this multiple times. Another time saying he regretted leaving Kentucky because he was banking everything on the Tim Duncan lottery, and once they didn't get him, he realized it was a mistake. So he felt that way in the beginning, but still stayed 4 years? Could this have been just an excuse? Who knows? All in all, he finished with 102 wins and 146 losses. 4 seasons, 0 playoff appearances. He never had a better record than his 36 wins in his first season. If you needed any proof that his coaching style was bringing the team down, his assistant coach Jim O'Brien took over after he stepped down, and the Celtics would go 24-24 for the rest of the season. The very next year, still under O'Brien, the Celtics finished 49-33 and made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Talk about dead weight. For the first time in Rick Pitino's coaching career, he was considered a failure, and the fans in Boston remember his stint as their coach as the worst time in Celtics history.